Did you know that some of Britain's most beautiful coastal villages were never meant to be found by cars, by maps, or even by the sea itself? Some sit on ledges too narrow for a single vehicle. Others were designed entirely from scratch, built to look like a place 400 miles away. A few have quietly rewritten art history, hidden shipwrecks, or vanished overnight and been rebuilt from nothing. For most of us, a search engine is as close as we'll ever get to actually standing in them. Welcome to a list of the most beautiful coastal villages in the UK, the ones you've genuinely never seen before. From above, Crovey looks like nothing more than a thin white line pressed against the cliffs of Aberdeenshire. But walk down to it and you'll find something almost impossible for a modern village. Not a single car has ever reached these houses. The path is too narrow, it always has been. When I looked into why, I found that residents still leave their vehicles at the top of the cliff and carry everything down by hand, wheelbarrows included, exactly as they did generations ago. This isn't nostalgia, it's the only option. A 1953 storm wiped out part of the original settlement and ended its fishing trade for good, yet people stayed. Around 50 still live here today, in a place so narrow the sea is only a few feet from every front door. How does a 17th century town survive into the present day, almost completely unchanged? In Culross, the answer is strange. It simply got left behind. When Scotland's Industrial Revolution swept through Fife, this port town on the Forth was quietly bypassed, and nobody ever came back to modernise it. What's here now is startling. White-hulled houses with red-tiled roofs, cobbled lanes climbing from harbour to abbey, a merchant's house from 1610 still standing exactly as it was built. It's why the producers of Outlander picked it for the fictional village of Cranesmuir without changing a thing. This matters because Culross isn't a reconstruction or a museum piece dressed up for tourists. It's a genuine working town that happened to freeze in place while the rest of the country moved on around it. The more I dug into Staithes, the less its scale made sense to me. Tucked into the cliffs of the Yorkshire coast in North Yorkshire, England, this fishing village has a lane called Dog Loop that measures just 18 inches across at its narrowest point. Possibly the tightest street in the entire country. And yet this same tiny village produced someone whose voyages would eventually chart the Pacific Ocean. James Cook came here at 16 to apprentice in a grocer's shop, hated it, fell in love with the sea instead, and left for Whitby within the year. What's left today is a preserved museum dedicated to him. Tucked among cobbled alleys barely wide enough for one person. It's a genuinely odd thing to sit with. An 18-inch street, and a man who redrew the map of half the world, both belonging to the same handful of houses. Every year on December 19th, at exactly 8 p.m, one small Cornish village turns its own Christmas lights off. Mousehole, in Cornwall, England, is famous for a harbour lit up in colour every winter, and once a year that light disappears on purpose for a single hour, leaving only a cross-shaped display glowing over the water. When I checked into why, the story turned out to be about 8 local lifeboatmen who set out into a storm in 1981 to rescue a stricken ship and never came home. Men from this same small community, sons and neighbours of the people who still live here. What's remarkable isn't the loss itself, but what the village chose to build from it. A ritual of remembrance that has now held, unbroken, for well over 40 consecutive years, carried on by a village of only a few hundred people. From the road, Cushendun looks exactly like it shouldn't. Rows of whitewashed, slate-roofed cottages sit against the Antrim coast in County Antrim, Northern Ireland, and they look almost identical to the fishing villages of Cornwall, 400 miles away across 2 seas. That's not a coincidence. In 1912, a local landowner named Ronald McNeil commissioned the architect behind Portmeirion to rebuild the entire village in a deliberately Cornish style, purely to please his wife, who had grown up in Penzance and missed home. So this isn't a village that evolved naturally over centuries. It's a full-scale architectural gift, built from scratch to recreate a coastline she loved. The result still stands today, cared for by the National Trust, sitting quietly at the mouth of a river, with sea caves nearby that later showed up in Game of Thrones. What actually happened to the original village of Runswick Bay? In North Yorkshire, England, the answer is that most of it simply slid into the sea. In 1682, unstable cliffs gave way overnight and carried nearly every cottage in the settlement down into the water below. And by some accounts, only one house was left standing. What makes it stranger is the timing. The whole village had gathered for a funeral that evening, which is why, remarkably, nobody died in the collapse. This matters because Runswick Bay isn't a ruin or a memorial site today. It was rebuilt, cliff and all, and is now considered one of the most photographed bays in Yorkshire, voted Britain's best beach as recently as 2020. Beneath the calm sand and the colourful cottages sits a coastline that has quietly swallowed an entire village before. In the late 1700s, one man in Polperro, Cornwall, England, was quietly managing an entire underground economy. Zephaniah Job, the village schoolteacher, became known locally as the smuggler's banker. He kept ledgers, financed ships, arranged credit, and effectively ran Polperro's contraband trade like a small, functioning business. When the writer John Wesley visited the village in 1762, he remarked that essentially everyone here was involved in smuggling in some way. That history still shapes the place today. Polperro's streets are so narrow that cars have always been banned from its harbour core, forcing residents and visitors alike to walk in on foot, past cottages built for a trade that officially never existed. Job's own papers now sit preserved in the local Heritage Museum, the paperwork of a criminal enterprise run with the discipline of a proper bank. When I looked into Teignmouth's history, I wasn't expecting to find an actual foreign invasion. This seaside town in Devon, England, is known today for its Georgian seafront and sandy beaches. But in July 1690, French naval forces landed here after winning a battle at sea, and spent hours ransacking and burning the town, one of the last successful foreign landings on English soil in the country's history. A petition from the shaken residents afterward described houses and boats destroyed and livestock killed in the streets. So how does a town like this end up known for genteel Georgian charm instead of that history? The rebuilding effort that followed, funded by a national subscription raised across England, transformed Teignmouth into the refined coastal town still standing today, its darkest chapter now marked only by a street named French Street. From above, Port Isaac looks like any other tucked-away Cornish harbour village, but walk into its centre and you'll find a passage locals call Squeezy Belly Alley, rumoured to be one of the narrowest streets anywhere in the world, barely wide enough for one person to pass through sideways. This village in Cornwall, England, has a population of just around 700 people, and yet it has quietly become one of the most recognised fishing harbours on television, doubling as the fictional Port Wen in Doc Martin for over a decade. What I found genuinely surprising was the scale mismatch. A village this small, with alleys this narrow, drawing tour buses and international visitors by the thousand each summer, all funneling through streets that were never built with more than foot traffic and fishing carts in mind. Somewhere in the mud at the bottom of Tobermory Bay, on the Isle of Mull, Scotland, a sunken ship has been sitting since 1588. When I checked the numbers on this one, they were wilder than they sound. More than 40 separate expeditions have gone looking for the wreck, believed to be a Spanish Armada galleon carrying a fortune in gold bullion, and not one has confirmed finding it. The story goes that the ship anchored here to resupply after a storm. A payment dispute broke out with the local clan, and the vessel exploded and sank just off what is now the town pier. That's over 4 centuries of treasure hunters, divers, and even novelists drawn to the same patch of water, chasing gold that may or may not still be down there. The harbour above it, meanwhile, is now better known to most visitors as the cheerful backdrop of a children's TV show. The more I looked into Tenby's walls, the more it became clear they weren't built out of ambition, they were built out of necessity. This coastal town in Pembrokeshire, Wales, is ringed by some of the best preserved medieval town walls in Britain, listed Grade 1 as one of the country's most historically important defensive structures. That strength exists because, in 1260, Welsh forces under Prince Llewellyn ap Gruffydd captured Tenby with relative ease and destroyed much of it. The earls who controlled the town realized their existing defenses simply weren't enough, and rebuilt on a much larger scale soon after. Today, those same walls, later reinforced again by Jasper Tudor in the 1450s, still stand intact along South Parade, with 6 towers and a surviving gate, a fortification born directly out of a town's worst defeat. How does an entire town simply appear on a stretch of empty coastline? In Aberaeron, Ceredigion, Wales, the answer is that it was designed before it existed. In 1807, a local reverend named Alban Thomas Jones Gwyn obtained a single Act of Parliament and used it to build 2 piers, a harbour, and the framework for a completely new town, at a cost of roughly £6,000, an enormous sum for the time. What's here today is the result. Rows of colourful Georgian terraces, arranged around a planned harbour and central square. One of the very first towns in Wales, built from a blueprint rather than grown organically over centuries. This matters because Aberaeron doesn't have the accidental patchwork feel of most old coastal towns. It has the coherence of a place someone actually sat down and planned, right down to the layout of its streets. From above, Lynmouth today looks like a peaceful Devon village where 2 rivers meet the sea. But on a single night in August 1952, an estimated 90 million tons of rain fell on the moors above this village in Devon, England, and funneled directly down into it, destroying more than 100 buildings and sweeping away 28 of the town's 31 bridges. It remains one of the most extreme flood events ever recorded in Britain. What I found most striking wasn't the destruction itself, but what came after. The village was entirely rebuilt, with its rivers deliberately rerouted around the new streets to prevent it from ever happening the same way again. That decision led directly to the creation of the UK's National Flood Warning Service. Walk through Lynmouth now, and you're walking through a village engineered, quite literally, out of its own worst night. When I checked the numbers on Whitby, one detail stood out immediately. 199 steps climb from the harbour up to the ruined abbey overlooking this town in North Yorkshire, England, and it was that exact walk that helped inspire one of the most famous horror novels ever written. Bram Stoker visited Whitby regularly in the 1890s, taking notes on shipwrecks, local dialect, and the abbey's Gothic ruins, all of which found their way directly into Dracula. The Count's arrival in the novel was based on a real 1885 wreck that ran aground here, with its entire crew mysteriously dead. So how does a working fishing port end up permanently linked to a fictional vampire? By the 1870s, Whitby also had over 200 shops selling jet, the black morning stone mined locally, a genuinely dark industry that, quite literally, helped set the mood. Wedged into the medieval walls of Conwy, Gwynedd, Wales, is a building just 72 inches wide and 122 inches tall. Smaller than most garden sheds, yet officially recognised by Guinness World Records as the smallest house in Great Britain. That's roughly 6 feet across and 10 feet tall, split across 2 tiny floors, and it was lived in continuously from the 16th century until 1900. Its final tenant was a fisherman named Robert Jones, standing well over 6 feet tall, who eventually had to move out simply because he couldn't stand up straight inside his own home. The house exists at all because of a gap between two rows of cottages built up against the town's ancient stone wall. A builder realized the side walls were already there, so all it needed was a front and a roof. The more I dug into the waters around Padstow, Cornwall, England, the less peaceful this postcard pretty harbour town started to feel. At the mouth of the Camel Estuary sits the Doom Bar, a shifting sandbank that has been blamed for over 600 shipwrecks since records began roughly 2 centuries ago. A genuinely staggering number for a stretch of coast most visitors never think twice about. The sandbank moves with the tides and currents, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous, catching out captains who think they know the estuary well. Today, Padstow is better known for celebrity restaurants and its famous May Day Obios festival, but that infamous sandbank is still there, still shifting, and still lending its name to Cornwall's best-selling beer. From the water, St Ives looks like any other Cornish fishing town. Pastel houses, a curved harbour, boats pulled up on the sand. But something about the light here is measurably different, and it quietly turned this working port in Cornwall, England, into an international art capital. Scientists studying it found that the clean sea air and reflections off the water shift the natural light toward blue, a subtle effect that painters started chasing here as early as the 1800s. By the mid-20th century, major modern artists including Barbara Hepworth and Ben Nicholson had settled permanently in St Ives, building a movement significant enough that Tate eventually opened a purpose-built gallery on the site of the town's old gasworks. What's strange is that none of this began with an art scene. It began with physics, and fishermen who happened to live somewhere, the light behaved differently.